So we'll start by turning your paper on the side. See how my paper's on its side? I can get my whole paper on there. Okay, so it's landscape. And I want you to draw a line toward the bottom of your paper. You'll have to hold the protractor in place. Start with that line. Okay, we're going to make a number line. We're going to call this number line X. So label it X over to the side. All right, now I'm going to move this up so you can see over people's heads, right? On this number line, I'm going to mark this as 0. The very end. Do you see how I have that tick mark on the very end? Sometimes these are called hash marks. Now, if you're a football fan, you know that hash marks on the football field are those little bitty lines where they have to kick their field goal from, okay? And the highest number on this number line, I want to be 10. And you can go ahead and put your arrows on there, that's fine, but you don't need them. Okay, so now we're going to space intervals. How many tick marks will I need to make 9? But I can't just start here and start doing 9. I'm going to work from the middle out. 10 is an even number, so try and find the middle the best you can. Then you'll put 4 tick marks on each side. Now we're going to label those 1 or 0 through 10. We're also going to mark the halfway point between each whole number. So a lot of times when I mark the halfway point, I make it a little smaller. Don't you? Kind of like on a ruler, okay? So I'm going to go through and just mark the halfway point on this number line. And I'm not going to label my halves. I'm just going to know that halfway between 9 and 10 is 9.5. Okay? So once you have that done, you should not have a protractor in your hand. Once you have that done, you're finished with number line X. Okay? Now I'm going to kind of combine a couple parts of this lesson. Okay? So now I want to have you I'm just going to skip this part. No, I don't think I will. Okay, let's talk about this number line real quick. So let's find point 2. Just point 2 where you would put coordinate 2. Okay? Don't put a dot there right now. Okay? Now, the distance from 0 is how many for the 2? 2 units from 0, okay? So we need to get used to going across this number line starting at 0, okay? What's 0 called again?
Origin.
Origin, awesome. Now point to 3.5. And notice I'm just kind of pointing with my pencil because it's easier. You can do the same thing. Okay, so this would be 3.5 units from the origin or 0. Good. moving to the right, correct? Okay, now I want you to put a point at 1.5. Label it A. We have a strategy for naming this point that falls right on a number line, okay? We'll come back to that in a minute. Now I want to make, are you ready for this? A perpendicular line that intersects at 0. This is what your protractor is for. Now, a perpendicular line is like the carpenter's square. It has an angle of 90 degrees in the corner. I don't have the set square we need, but we can use a protractor. I want you, flip it over, to line up your protractor so that 0 is touching the inside of the protractor, and this line right here is lined up with number line X. Then we're not going to be able to draw the whole 6-inch line, are we? But you can draw part of it from the inside of the protractor, and then you can finish it off. Now, because we're using a protractor, not a set square, there's no guarantee it's exactly 90 degrees. But if I can put my plus sign right on there, ooh, that's backwards, hold on. And my line lines up with 90 degrees, I did a pretty good job. Okay? So perpendicular lines are going to be lines that intersect at a 90-degree angle. Now this is a quick little cram session for your test week. Okay? Now, there's another type of line. It's called a parallel line, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's label this second number line, okay? It's going to be called Y. Oh, you know where I'm going with this. X and Y coordinates, X and Y axis. So this, boys and girls, when I have an X and a Y intersecting as perpendicular lines, we're going to call it a coordinate plane or a coordinate grid. I need you to focus, okay? Now, remember the other one was 6 inches long, so let's mark the end of it so they're about the same length. I'm going to have to move that Y up a little bit. Okay, so what was the end point on the x-axis? 10. So we'll go ahead and label that 10, and we're going to have 0 be the origin where we start, okay? Now, to put my tick marks or hash marks on, I think I better turn it horizontal. It'll just be easier. So 10 is an even number. Mark the middle. You will need 4 tick marks on each side, placed as evenly spaced as possible. We're not going to take time to measure today. Label those 0 through 10. And label your halves with a smaller tick mark. Okay, so now you can see that I have perpendicular lines. I'll give you your own coordinate grid here in a minute. I was watching the video this morning, and guess what? There's only two things students have to remember. Which one is the X and which one is the Y? So I got a trick. Would you like to know my trick? Okay. Instead of this manuscript Y, I'm going to make a capital Y. Now the capital Y has a line that goes vertical, correct? So I know that my y-axis is my vertical line. The X crosses, so I know that the X is my horizontal line because it goes across. That's my little trick for remembering. I won't ever forget because of the capital Y and the vertical line. Now, if you do a lowercase y, it's not quite as easy to remember, okay? But a capital Y, you can even look at the alphabet in the room. The capital Y has a vertical line. So let's take a look at this coordinate plane. It's also called a coordinate grid, okay? It's all set up for us and everything. All we're going to do is label the two number lines with our whole numbers and X and Y. So go ahead and label your X and Y first. And it's okay with me if you go ahead and write a capital Y to help you remember, okay? Now I want you to tell me, what do you think this is right here in the corner? 0. And I'm going to tell you this is going to be 10. And let's go ahead and label every other line. So see where I'm putting my tick marks? If you can't see, Kimberly, you can always look at the computer, okay? So is this big enough? You can see that I skipped a space. I skipped a line. You should be making those tick marks right now. And then I'm going to label these 1 through 10. I'm not even going to mess with the half. Can you tell where half is? Yeah, it's where that first box is, isn't it? Now this is the grid. The grid is a bunch of squares. Each one of those intersections is a perpendicular line. Okay? What do you think this top part of the y-axis is? 10. And every other line, put a tick mark. Okay, now this is where we're going to start putting some coordinates on this grid. Or it's also called a coordinate plane. Why do you think I'm calling it both? You never know what people are going to call it. So you need to know both of them, okay? All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to draw, and I'm not going to tell you where to put it. I just want you to point with your pencil to start with, okay? I want you to put a point at 4, 3. Now I want to show you with my fingers that the x-axis would be 4 and the y-axis would be 3, because I said the x is always first unless it's labeled differently. Then, it's kind of like yesterday when we had to meet in the middle. But you're going to meet where those two lines intersect. So 4, 3 would be right where 4 and 3 intersect. And you're going to put a square there. Now the square needs to be right where that perpendicular line is, to the best of your ability. Okay? Now what do you think the x and y coordinates are of the square? 4, 3. Why do you say 4, 3? So in order to label this square, I would write 4, 3, and typically they're in parentheses. Just write that over to the side. Now, here's another way to do it. Are you watching? I could take my square and show where it comes down to intersect the x-axis. So I know that the x is 4. I could come over here, show that it intersects at 3, so I know the y is 3. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, I want for you to tell me what the x coordinate is for that point.
3 and 1.
No, I just said x.
3.
3. Okay. Let's do something else. The next thing I want you to do is put a star at 3, 1. Put a star at 3, 1. Would I start with my point and then make a star on top of it? So where is the star? Which number would I write first, the 3 or the 1? So the star is at 3, 1. Now I made a mistake on that, so I'm going to change the next one. Okay, so you ready? Now start with a point, put a triangle at 5, 1/2. 5, 1/2. Triangle. Now was it hard to find 1/2? How'd you find it?
Because I just put that 1 and then
Halfway between 0 and, yeah. Okay, so this is a triangle. What are the x and y coordinates of this triangle? Hayden, what are the x and y coordinates of the triangle?
3 1/2, 3 1/2, 5 1/2.
So 5, and you might not want to say and in between. Whoops, look at that line. You might want to say 5, 1/2, not 5 1/2, because they might think that means 5 1/2 over or 5 1/2 up. Okay. All right, let's do another one. I want you to put a check mark at 1/2, 5. One half 5. One half 5 would be right here. So the check mark, what are the x and y coordinates of it?
1/2 of 5. 1/2 of 5.
Good. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about this because this gets pretty confusing, okay? This is easy unless your coordinates end up on the lines. And then you might still think it's easy, but we're going to try this, okay? Okay, so I want you to place a circle at 0, 7. A circle at 0, 7. Okay, where'd you put it?
I put it at 7.
This one or this one?
That bottom one. Why? Because you said 0 was first.
0 is first. And I said I want you to put a circle at 0, 7. And this is where kids get confused. How far from the origin is 0?
That's right there.
It's right there. So on the x-axis, look at me. It's right here. And then I'm going to go 7 from the origin on the y-axis. And then I'm going to meet. So your circle would be right there. Okay, let's do another one. Let's put a parallelogram. Let's put a parallelogram at, so a parallelogram, remember how to draw one of those? Okay, I want you to put a parallelogram at 8.5, 0. So 8.5 from the origin on the x-axis is where? And 0 from the origin on the y-axis is where? And so where they meet is, oops, it's supposed to be a parallelogram, isn't it? Okay. Parallelogram. Right there. Okay, now I'm going to ask you some questions because this is where it gets confusing. Ready for the questions? Okay, which shape is 4 units from the y-axis?
4 units from the y. 7.
Which shape is 4 units from the y-axis?
0.
The square. Because it's going over 4 from the y. Ready? 1, 2. Here, let me point my pen. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have to listen carefully to the question. They're trying to confuse you when they say 4 units from the y-axis, but you're giving the x coordinate of 4. So you got to know what they're asking, okay? Which unit is, or which shape is 1 unit from the x-axis? The star. You're getting this, okay? Which unit, are you ready for this? Has an x coordinate of 0? Or which shape has an x coordinate of 0?
The circle. We're like
X coordinate of is the circle. Should have made a circle, huh? Okay, those are the confusing questions. We're going to go ahead and put these papers away, pick up the problem set, and work through some of the problems.
the trash.